G'day pals, welcome back to a new video. Today, I wanted to give you a bit of a channel update on what's going on with me and my life. I'm actually here in Thailand. This is the second month of my trip. I'm here for the majority of the year actually. My wife is here studying on exchange, and so I've kind of just tagged along to be with her. And in January, I was just kind of making sure that my life could be readjusted and my work could continue. And so today I wanted to talk about that, about what I'm doing, what my plans are for the year. So let's get into it. All right, so first thing is I'm actually in the middle of a game jam at the moment. I'm working on the Ludwig Jam, Ludwig the YouTuber slash streamer. It's a 10-day jam and I just kind of impromptu joined it because I love doing game jams. And at the moment we're kind of crushing it. Like I started building this Smash Brothers style prototype that's already got like a functional camera and player controller. There's even wave dashing, wave landing. Let's go. Movement. So I don't want to give away too much about what's going to happen in the game, but the theme of the jam is Coots, which is Ludwig's cat, this white cat. And so for 2 days progress, I think we're doing really, really well. Can't wait to see kind of where that goes. And if you can't wait too, you can come and join my stream and watch me make it. I'll be streaming today as well. But this isn't the core focus of the video. Of course, there's a bit more that I want to talk to you about. So I really wanted to talk about my main work today, which includes this channel. I feel like there's been a lot weighing on me, and it's been hard to put this kind of into words. So here goes. I've written a bit of a script, so if it feels a bit stilted, that's because I'm reading. So when I first created this channel, my goal was to kind of take my experiences working on Insignia and share it with you. And I think the latter part of that has been something that I've achieved quite well. I feel like I've shared a lot of what I learned, but the Insignia part is the part that's kind of taken a bit of a backseat. You know, mentions of my project are things that I do while I'm inside of a tutorial. I might give a cursory example or a tangent to say, oh, and this is how I might do this in Insignia. And I think that in the scope of, say, a pixel art class, that is an appropriate amount of self-promotion, right? You come for the information and I like to give it. So I feel like that's been something that has been fine. But for my own sake, as somebody who wants to be considered more of a game developer than someone who makes game development tutorials, I've been, I guess, kind of hiding it a little bit, partly because I think the algorithm doesn't like it, or maybe you won't care. And I think this is a bit of a disservice. For me personally, I think it's time I start focusing more on Insignia in the channel. And there's a few factors that are kind of going into this, and I want to talk them through with you now. The first is that I'm actually kind of experiencing a little bit of burnout when it comes to producing tutorial videos. The pixel art class videos are something that I started with a lot of passion to share things that I think are foundational to pixel art and to explore those things with you, and even niche things that I feel like I have a lot of experience with. But after 100 videos, there is a kind of pressure to, as an educator, continue to produce novel information, so new content, things that you haven't seen me cover before, and with a level of accuracy that is objectively correct. So as my kind of skill set gets covered, I'm being pushed into wider and broader topics that I have maybe less experience with. And to do that on a weekly cadence, which is what I've been kind of working at in the last 3 years, kind of uploading once a week or once every couple of weeks, to do that in areas that are, you know, less and less familiar to me, creates a kind of a risk that the quality can't be upheld and that the videos will be more and more on topics that I'm less passionate about, right? Because I covered my passions, you know, in earlier videos. And when I look back on those videos, I struggle to find the same motivation that I had to share things that I was like most passionate about, like ideas and concepts to do with working on the game or things that I had learned in animation or pixel art that I felt like I hadn't spoken about yet and that I'd had a lot of time to think about. So this is partly why I haven't done a programming series yet, because programming is such an objective skill and there's so much about it that's very specific, that's less about my personal experience. I'm happy to talk about kind of strategies I took to learn programming. I know it's something you guys want, but it's something that I don't think that I'm personally suited for. I'm a very practical person. I like to learn while I do, and that involves making a lot of mistakes sometimes, kind of failing fast rather than, you know, reading the documentation and regurgitating it one for one. And part of the reason why it's hard to keep up this weekly schedule is that YouTube has never really been my core focus anyway. It's kind of a failing from my perspective. I think that a lot of you, this is my largest audience here on YouTube, don't even really know what Insignia is or that I have a live stream. And on the flip side, I spend more than 25 hours a week making content on stream every week and have been for the last like 5 years. So as something that's like a major part of my week, it's something that plays such a minor focus on my channel where most people who follow me see me. And that's what I think is like the big failure of like the mission that I have. Part of this comes down to the fact that there's a bit of a sentiment around game developers, particularly game development content creators, that finishing a game or making a game to completion is something they can't do, or something that's less fun to watch, right? It's really fun to watch someone start something or make something in a short period of time, but the kind of grind of making something over a long period of time is something that I've been kind of a little bit ashamed to show. Maybe because being inside of a work in progress feels less confident or capable, right? It's hard to say I'm doing this compared to I've done this. It's become clear to me recently that actually, in fact, having the stamina and drive to just stay the course and work on a project over a long period of time is a notable story worth sharing, and something that I think a lot of kind of early developers or people getting into game development who are working on a big project would be comforted to watch, or would find interesting to watch what that's like, different from just sharing something that's finished or something new that was built. So with the hope that I'm not wrong there and that you are interested in watching this whole thing take shape, that's what I want to focus more on doing. I want to share more of Insignia with you. So here's a bit of a recap. Up until October last year, I was working on the second chapter of my game out of 5. I started the project in 2017. So from 2017 to 2020, that was chapter 1. From 2020 to 2022, that was chapter 2. And I was basically building on that prototype into the next part of the game, and finding something was not quite working. I was spending a lot of time, building out environments and putting lore into the game, quests, lots of content, but finding that there was something kind of not working. It wasn't really building towards like a cohesive, satisfying end. As far as specifically the end game mechanics, like what does it look like when you're looking at gameplay in chapter 5, and how is what's happening in chapter 2 working towards that? I was really, really struggling to find that. And it's something that I'm quite pedantic about, specifically in an action adventure game like Insignia is. It's not enough to just rely on progression through statistics, like having levels and having power go up is actually something that I want you to be able to see through what the character is capable of doing from a mechanics perspective, and for that to bear out based on what's happening in the game, right? Like in a narrative sense, not just you just hit a threshold and you got stronger. The mechanics that I had, although they were all, perfectly fine action adventure mechanics that you would expect in a game, crafting, combat, platforming, stuff like that, I really didn't see them working together. And an example of this would be something like the following. I was working on building this really interesting kind of rhythmic almost combat system with enemies that have really tight behavior state trees. And that combat feel and rhythm is kind of lost if the player can craft a weapon that's just 3 times stronger and kill the enemy in 2 hits. So there's kind of like a push and pull between these 2 different mechanics that seem like they both fit in a game, but don't work together. And I've started to call this competing values. This is something that basically changed my mindset on game dev completely in the last 6 months. And I'd love to make a video more about this idea specifically and go into like the details about how you can avoid creating conflicting values for your player and in the design of your mechanics and stuff like that. So amid the pandemic, and while I was doing a lot of contracting to supplement my income and help pay for my wedding, which happened last year, and while I was planning that all, I kind of hit this point where I felt like I was really struggling to identify this issue. I kind of knew it in the back of my mind, but I thought that if I just worked on something different whenever I got stuck, that eventually I'd have enough stuff to fall together. And it really didn't happen that way. It kind of just felt like for like almost 18 months, I was spinning my wheels, making stuff, and none of it was going further. I was going deeper, but not forward. I don't think it was very fun to watch. It was really hard to make, and I was starting to fear that it wasn't going to be fun to play. But I think I was right. I think it wouldn't have been fun to play if I didn't do what happened next. So at the end of the year, I really wanted to address that. I finished up a contract. I had gone interstate to Melbourne to go attend PAX. And while I was at PAX, I caught COVID and had to stay in Melbourne for like a week. And while I was there, stuck in the hotel, I thought, right, I'm going to fix this issue and I'm not going to move on until I have. I was going to go home, but I wasn't going to move on from the development until I'd finished it. So I literally just sat down here in Figma and built this massive document where I just covered everything that I had been thinking about, what was working, what wasn't working, what my values were, what I wanted to see the gameplay feel like, and ways that I thought I might be able to achieve that. And thinking about things where I made decisions about the game will be like this and it won't be like this. It will have this feature and that feature will be interacted with this way. As I kind of did that and solidified the game that I wanted to make, not just an action adventure, which is what I was building before, but specifically this action adventure, I grew in confidence. And I got to the point where I could very confidently draft a feature, prototype it incredibly quickly in the game in like a day, and then build out like 10 examples of that mechanic or that content being expressed, and then fashion those examples into like a mini dungeon. And so now I kind of found that I'm sort of well on my way to having like dozens and dozens of like sections of my game prototyped out. And it's quite an intuitive process. All of the pieces are kind of modular and I can swap and change them very easily. And the dungeons themselves are almost modular. So there is still permanent progression in the game, but moment to moment, what you are being faced with and the tools you have to deal with it are not dependent necessarily on parts of the game that you might have experienced prior. Kind of incidentally, almost by accident, I went from having, chapter 1 of my game, mostly done, to struggling a little bit on chapter 2 and not being able to quite nail it, to somehow accidentally sort of doing like half of chapter 3, just by virtue of prototyping and testing the content, really starting with the mechanics, building out rough content. So this is an example of one of those kind of mini dungeons. It's just a prototype. It's taking a bunch of screens of content that involve, a single puzzle that can be done, and chaining them together in a way that kind of progresses and becomes more complex and tests you a little bit further for the purpose of like unlocking and mastering an ability in the game. And I have a few of these now. And what's great about this is that I can validate it all very simply. And I have that long-term vision for the game kind of set in mind already. Like I'm prototyping all of the abilities. As I'm adding each one, I'm seeing how I can fit that back into the end game combat flow and what that looks like. It's been like kind of a massive weight off of my shoulders to find that all the work I've been doing over that 18-month period is suddenly good for something, right? It's all falling together. For example, what you're looking at right now, this is called Scene Graph. I built this in, I think, 2021 and recently added a bit more features to it as my world manager, my world map editor, essentially. I can add scenes here with the click of a button, and I can connect the doors between scenes just as easily. And this is something that I built while I was like spinning my wheels, but it's been incredibly helpful to actually visualizing and structuring my game. So none of the time that I spent has gone to waste. It's all just sort of accelerating now what I'm doing, which is great. So now I really feel like I have this momentum and I really feel confident in where the project is going and that I have that velocity. And that's kind of why I feel more confident making it something more public and being more open with it with you. And I don't just mean that in a content creation way. Long term, I've always wanted to be more of a hands-on game director than a solo developer. I love doing solo dev and it's great for jams, but I think the games that I want to spend my life making are bigger games than I can make by myself. I also think that Insignia is one of those games that's going to need a few more hands before it's ready to release. I've already proven to myself that I can make this game through the grace of you all on Patreon and my Twitch subscribers. It's something that I can keep doing, so I'll never have to stop, even if what I'm about to say doesn't happen. But I think for the health of the game, the best step forward is to open up the project to more people. just knowing what a game takes to release of this size, from QA, localization, marketing, distribution, all that stuff is not going to be done by myself very easily. And so maybe not right now, maybe like 3 months from now, 6 months from now, maybe after a few more devlogs where I show you more about what the project's doing and what's happening with it. I think I want to hire a team to help me finish it. This can only really be done through external funding, whether it's publisher funding or crowdfunding, which is something that I might get you to help me out with. But like I said, I'm not in a hurry, and I really want to make sure that I'm able to sell the vision of the game based on what I've built, what I've proven that I can build, before kind of asking for any of that attention. I'm very adamant about not asking for anything more than exactly what I need, and knowing exactly what I need before I actually ask for anything. And that involves knowing exactly what I'm making. So until I'm 100% ready, let's just consider this like an expression of interest call out. If you run a big publisher, or you are a crackshot programmer who has experience shipping games, because that's kind of where I'm needing more help, not so much building the core mechanics or anything, but like actually polishing and distributing stuff. If you're an animator or an environment artist or a composer, I am open to your expressions of interest. It might be healthy for us to work on some kind of game jam together first and see if it's a good fit. I'm kind of not really looking to just outsource stuff. I want to build a bit of a team. I look at other indie developers like the team that made Celeste, and I think that's kind of what I'm looking for, right? Like a group of friends, more so than a guy who's looking to just hire some people to do some stuff. For me, like Insignia is my life. And when I work on something, my standard is really like, how can I make this as good or better than my favorite game that does this thing that I'm working on? So if you have that mentality too, and you're excited about working on something like that, then that's what I'm looking for. Of course, I want to continue making video content here on the channel, and even pixel art class where it does make sense. If I have something that I feel really passionate about sharing with you, I will make a video about it. But consider this a kind of an unofficial end to my hypothetical weekly schedule of pixel art class videos, and look forward to more Insignia Dev Log content very soon. So I hope you're ready for some changes here on the channel, because whether or not you are, I am. And I hope you have a good weekend. And oh yeah, come watch me make this game for Ludwig Jam. Okay, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.